the big news of the weekend. Penn State adds Trebor Pena to their team. Zach, there's a lot of people talking about how this kind of makes them, solidifies them as national championship, either favorites or up there to be favorites. You and I talked about it as if he wasn't going to Penn State because he was supposed to take
Hmm.
the trip to Miami. He does not take that trip. There's a lot of rumors, Penn State paid up, Miami decided to use their money elsewhere, yada, yada, yada. Whatever happened, Trebor Pena is now going to be a Nittany Lion. I stand by what we said. I didn't think it would be the worst loss in the world, and I didn't think this would be like, you know, the best thing ever. Like this wasn't Caleb Downs to Ohio State, in my opinion.
Hmm.
No offense to
Right.
Trebor Pena, but he's not that level of talent. Very good wide receiver in a position of need for Penn State. Don't get me wrong, but he's not quite that level. I shouldn't even say not quite. That's disregarding Caleb Downs. He's not at that level. But this is still a huge addition for Penn State. People are giving Penn State a lot of credit here. What are your thoughts on the addition of Trebor Pena? And then does this make Penn State a national championship favorite to you?
Favorite? No, because I think you and I are probably in agreement here that it's probably more about Aller than it is about the receivers. But I do think it is the biggest thing they could do, right? He was the best receiver in the portal that they could get. They add him to two other transfer receivers who are, I think, upgrades from the receivers they had a year ago. And now Aller has no excuses, right? But Penn State still has questions. They do lose Abdul Carter. And while they do have a lot of guys coming back, that is a question about the defense, especially with Knowles reshaping that defense. And there's Aller's development. But I think the big thing here is that we can no longer say, well, Aller doesn't have receivers. He's got three new ones. All three of them, I think, are upgrades to, I think, underrated guys. Like Trey Wallace and Amari Evans weren't terrible, but they weren't like these three. I think it's an improvement over those two guys, I think.
Yeah, they're going to
And
go to Power Five teams. Correct me if I'm wrong. They're going to go to Power Five teams and play this year. Maybe not start, but they're going to get playing time this year. So
yeah,
it's not like these are Group of Five backup type players, right?
yeah. But I do think it's an improvement across the board. So now Aller has no excuses. That would be I think my takeaway. The other thing is if you're going to call Franklin a fraud, like we were alluding to, this completely destroys that argument, I think. Because he went out, he did business, and he got a guy that they coveted and was being enticed and wooed by other big time programs. I don't care what Miami says about, well, they're going to invest their money elsewhere. You still beat Miami, and they're throwing bags at people left and right. And so I think it's a big pickup for Penn State. I think it's a big recruiting win or transfer portal win for James Franklin. And I do think it helps, but I still don't think it screams, oh, Penn State's the team to beat.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I totally agree. A lot of this is on Aller and his development. Even if the wide receivers are an upgrade, he still is somebody. I mean, we pointed out with Chris in the Penn State video that I did with him that this Aller has a bit of a tendency to not throw downfield at times. I think he looked better in doing that last year, so I do think he's growing, and I think the potential is there. I'm just saying it has to continue to grow and continue to develop, and also, James Franklin in big games. Is he gonna make the correct decisions? Is he gonna make the right calls? He beat Boise State and he beat SMU. Well, guess what? Those weren't games that came down to the wire. So as far as I'm concerned, you need to you need to win these big games, especially the one against Notre Dame where you had that game essentially
Yeah.
locked up if you could just move the ball down the field. Unfortunately, they weren't able to do so, and they lost that one. But as far as I'm concerned, on favorites to win the national championship next year, I would probably, and we talked about this with Yankee a little bit in our call-in show, I'd probably put them top three. I'd probably say it's
Yeah.
Ohio State, Texas, and Penn State for me. I mean, very slightly, I probably have Ohio State, but I don't feel great about that. And I also recognize that I'm an Ohio State fan, so I probably have a little bit of bias by saying that. But at the same time, I just think that they have a whole lot of talent coming back. And I also don't know if any team has really improved all that much to get ahead of Ohio State last to this year. Clemson's kind of doing the same thing Penn State is doing, but I think Penn State probably has some better talent in my mind than Clemson. Obviously, somebody who's in the ACC, and the ACC's not been going well so far. So those would probably be my three favorites, but I wouldn't argue somebody if they put a Georgia or an Oregon or a Clemson in there instead of one of the others. Like I think it's a very close race going into the season.
Yeah. I think the difficulty in all of this, Penn State returns the most talent because Georgia, Ohio State, Texas all lost a lot of guys. I mean, Ohio State and Georgia especially. And there's the question of how do those teams respond to losing so much talent? That's, I think, the biggest question mark for me is, does Penn State's talent retention give them a leg up on some of the other powers?
Yeah. In addition to everybody else, we have Terry here with us saying, "Hey boys, IU had a great off season." Yes, they
Yeah,
did.
they
Gonna
did.
talk Indiana a little bit when we get to our first rounds segment as well. John is here, says, "Good evening. Sorry I'm late, but go Hoosiers." You're not that late,
Mm,
John. No worries. We appreciate you being here. Philip has an insightful. Oh, and 49ers, they did get to Indiana Hoosiers, so that's good for them. I love that 49ers took them. We'll end the Trebor Pena discussion on this. Philip says, "Is Allard just Dak Prescott in Dallas, check down king, but struggles against the best teams?" I mean, I don't really want to put anybody in Dak Prescott level, especially somebody I like in Drew Aller. Like, I think that's the thing some people don't get. Like, I like Drew Aller. Dude's from Ohio. Dude went to Penn State because Ohio State was only interested in him late, and I get that. But I like Drew Aller. I think that he has a lot of talent. He just needs to get off, just doing one read essentially. And I
yeah,
think that's kind of when he's got himself in the most trouble. He looks at that first read and just kind of goes with it, and it is
yeah.
what it is. But I think he can move on from there. So, any final thoughts on Drew Aller and everything before we move on, Zach?
I think one other question, and I think you were just kind of alluding to this with Aller and being one read. I am curious how year two of being in the Andy Kotelnicki system helps or doesn't help Drew Aller. Like, does he get more comfortable, and does that allow his mechanics to be more sound? Does he actually scan the field better being in year two of that offense?
Yeah, great point. Great point.